This is session 3. If you want to follow along with the home version and go to links and all those kinds of things, once again, we're at bit.ly/BPL site. And if you open that up and go under home, it's the From1to1 vision for blended and personalized learning. So it's just under the home. And I'll put the thing back up. Don't worry, Dawn.
Yeah. The bit.ly was.
Is bit.ly/BPL site. You don't have to. It's okay. I will allow it. I brought paper and everything for folks who don't like the other stuff. You're here, man. You're here. That's right.
Nice.
So, let me just wait for just a second because I don't know that you've been here before.
Because it's not.
No. bit.ly/BPL.
Well, think about like
Sorry.
even with math, like
Yeah, blended personalized learning.
what you probably use
Site.
stone.
That's
So
We
maybe
were just
it's
talking about
like
that. So man.
then
So
like
just under-
calculators,
Yep.
more simplified
Brilliant.
than like
Love
digital
it.
calculators. Like
And then
now we
under
have like
home,
graphic
you just
calculators.
highlight
Like, it's
there.
just, I mean,
Yeah.
Yep,
it's
that
just
one.
tools to
it's-
solve.
There you
like,
can see
math.
the other sessions and all that kind of good
Thank
stuff.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like
But I was telling Rand, I had the window thing on my car go out, where it controls the windows, and the window wouldn't go up. So I just grabbed my phone, hey Siri, how do you fix this? And all of a sudden a part number popped up, $80, took off the door panel and installed it.
yeah, I did that yesterday. I was trying to. Yeah.
It's no different than,
I mean, you still have to take the door apart.
well, yeah, but I mean, you got a tutorial video right there, right? I
Yeah,
popped
it
it up
shows
in
you
my
how to
car,
do
and
it.
I'm like watching it,
Step by
popping it
step,
out, yeah,
class.
plugged it in, put it back in, now all
Yeah.
my windows go up, and now I got a
Exactly.
brand new window controller.
I once saw a session with Kristen Swanson. I don't know if you know her. She's a fantastic design thinker and does some other stuff. But she did a session specifically on we are all YouTube mechanics now. And and just essentially like this is how we search for things now. This is and looking at the resources that we have. So I'm going to ground us a little bit. The last time that we came together, we really kind of honed in on the.
It does.
Hello, sir. On the vision of blended and personalized learning as sort of these set of icons. So I'm going to do a very brief version of this, starting with the learner in the center, having 24/7 access to the digital resources and the content on a device that is personalized for them, that they go to physical. Ooh, mood lighting.
Wow.
That was
Go-
like really weird too.
Yeah. Go to physical
Why didn't you
spaces.
do that electronically, Kevin?
That's right.
Yeah, right.
You just stand up and walk.
Stop it. Physical spaces with physical resources that students need in order to be able to collaborate and create together in a networked and social learning environment, that they are in ownership of their data, making decisions about their learning based upon their knowledge of where they are in the content curriculum and the learning, that they are sharing their work very often with one another and with their teacher in order to get authentic feedback, that they are earning credentials in a consistent way that offer value and give access to further opportunities, and that we as a system are constantly moving the boxes for kids, creating equitable outcomes across this entire environment. So last time we sort of previewed that a little bit, and we said we would focus on a couple of elements sort of each time that we come together. And I negotiated with Amy Spatz that we would talk about spaces, but unfortunately every time that I tried to move the meeting so that she could be involved, like nobody else could come. And so I'm going to meet with her specifically on Thursday to talk about spaces and facilities and things like that.
That's interesting there, just to throw some input.
Yes, please.
I and a few of my team members were out at Boulder Valley School District this morning, and I'm meeting with their CIO and one of their security leads. And in the room that we were meeting in, they stated that the room was pretty much the standard that was currently in place for all their classrooms. So they had 4 monitors in that room. Think of it like this: there's 2 monitors up here next to with the video conference camera. Then in the back they had another monitor over there and another monitor over there. The whiteboards, I'm sorry, they had movable. They have 4 of them on one wall, which you can shift and move in any given space. The chairs were really unique. So they all were swivel, they were all movable. They had the little desktop place here on the top, and then they could all shift and move those anywhere in the classroom.
Yep.
The Chromebook stations were not in carts, they were cabinets that were in the corner. They were all powered. And he said, this is our standard classroom throughout the district, and this is what we're moving towards.
Boulder Valley.
And I said, okay, well, that's unique.
Are they
I like
hiring?
that. So it's, when you're talking about the learning spaces, you know, I actually was able to get to see that firsthand today.
So let's bring that to this conversation, because that's exactly what I want to talk about, and talk about also centering it on the types of learning spaces that we need in order to be able to support this. So we're going to use a few different resources, but just like we did the last few times, we can animate and look at our little icons as they move across. And so these are the two that we're really focused on: the spaces, the physical spaces that we need in order to collaborate, create, and make things that matter to kids and matter for their learning. So we are going to use a construct today that is from the K-12 Blueprint. If you haven't seen it, it's from a journal called Tech and Learning. They put this out a little while ago to talk about the different kinds of spaces that we learn within. So these are the 4 quadrants that they put together. So you see alone, private, together, public. So this is
Public.
alone and public, right? So this is a lot of our classroom spaces where a student is working on their own, but they are in a shared public space. Okay? Alone private, meaning like it's really fairly isolated, just them working alone, whether that's like in a small room or they are acoustically alone, you know, in some way, shape, or form. Private together is like small groups, right, where they're in their own smaller shared space. And then public together is like either whole class or really large group spaces, okay? So you can kind of think about not only learning spaces, but just all spaces, kind of where those are, right? My bedroom is sometimes a private alone, sometimes it is, I guess, together, private, right? I would say, all right, we're not going there. All right, but you're thinking about all of the different spaces that you inhabit. They should, unless there is some weird outlier that is like an amalgamation, right? But all of our learning spaces in classrooms are a combination of these different things. And so what I wanted to do is actually have us look at our schools. Who can name this school? You might have to get a little closer. It's a little small. This is an actual blueprint of one of the parts of one of our schools.
It's Gateway.
It is Gateway.
Yeah.
Wow.
Nice work. Bonus points for Miss Skip. All right, so this is one way of looking at it, but it doesn't actually reveal what these spaces are used for. If you zoom in on your own screen, you might be able to see it. But this is the Library Media Center. This says language classroom. This says math classroom. Okay? That's probably not the best way for us to look at these spaces. What might be more useful is if we look at them with some children in them, or we look at a particular classroom. Okay? This is an example at Iowa. And actually the next, I think, 4 or 5 pictures are from Iowa. And I have blacked out people's faces because I did not ask all of the children about their media release. So because this went up on a website, I am not, going to mess around with that. And so these are spaces all in this single classroom. And you can look at the different spaces that are available for kids to use.
That one in the corner was naughty.
Yeah, so that's interesting, right? This kid actually chose to sit here,
Oh.
okay? Which is interesting, right? This is over at, where were we at? This was at Fulton. And then this one also was at Fulton, kids learning on the floor with a few other components. This was over at VPE. I just love this kid's stance.
Mm-hmm.
No chair whatsoever. I could never really do that, but that's
kneeling on his own.
On his heels.
yeah, on his own heel, which is super cool,
Is that a
right?
yoga position?
These are some things that were available, right? So bean bags, very interesting, what I would say is like barber chair, looking things. If you click on this one is over at Tollgate, and you can actually go around within it once it opens up. So if you go like this, you can move around and see what this particular elementary, whose classroom was this? This was
Aaron, not Aaron, I don't remember her name.
It's not Aaron? All right, I thought it was Aaron.
Yeah.
We'll look it up.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this is a classroom in Tollgate. And then we have APS Online. Okay, some interesting spaces here.
We got it when it was clean.
This was at the beginning of the year, yeah.
I was like, it doesn't look like that now.
So these are all spaces that we have within our system. You are more than welcome to bring in other spaces if you wish to do so. But what I would like us to do is using this structure to think about what are all of the learning spaces that we have that you can identify either from the pictures or from your own experience inside of our classrooms, and where do they fit? Do we have lots and lots of spaces for kids to be alone and private with their thinking and their learning? Do we have lots and lots of spaces for public togetherness, everyone doing everything together, that kind of thing, right? So, if you, sorry, go ahead.
Quick question. So the first layout that you gave us was Gateway, and then you gave us pictures of classrooms that were elementary. So would you think that there would also be a different layout for the schools based on the grade levels as well?
I think there definitely
APS
can be,
Online,
right?
right?
So APS Online is a secondary school, VPE is a middle school, and so those two spaces are definitely different than what we saw in the elementary. But yeah, I would say, are there opportunities for some of these different types of spaces in each one of our grade levels? But you're right, absolutely. Like, kids who are learning different things need different kinds of spaces, and to your point earlier, flexible spaces, right? Things that could move from one to another pretty easily. So, if you would like, I have paper to actually draw out your 4 quadrants and start writing up the spaces that you either find here or that you would like or that you have seen in your own school. Definitely opportunities there. If you'd rather use,
making a chart.
you're making a chart and then filling out the chart. It's a graphic organizer time. I like that a lot. All right, let's share out some ideas around these different spaces. And if you did it digitally, you can project up if you would like to do so. But I would love for maybe every person or group to share at least one thing that they would like to call out as a space.
I'll go.
Do it, man.
Most of you already heard me, but I'm just, a lot of what I do has to do with discipline, and I'm really excited about some of the schools that are creating spaces in their disciplinary area, regardless of what you want to call that. So whether it's a dean's office or an RJ room or a redirection room or what have you, a lot of schools are beginning to use those as instructional spaces, and I think that really is something that's been missing from a lot of our disciplines, so that's exciting.
Nice.
I think we called out devices that could go in any of these areas. So if you're on your device, you can be public together, public alone, alone private, alone together when you're on a device. So it's...
Talk about that a little bit more. How does the device let you move between those spaces more
I
easily?
think it's the flexibility, but I mean, you have everything at the tip of your fingertips. So I mean, if I want to do something on my own, I just take my device and I could be sitting here and I could just be working without listening to any of you guys because we're together, but.
That's a good point. That means you can put all in every quadrant.
Yeah.
And I think looking at we were talking about intentionality, right? Like, we do that a lot as adults where we are alone together in a meeting space or something like that, where we are all working independently on something else, right? But we're together, but it's not actually building, right, physically, but it's not building towards anything,
No.
right? And so how can we be intentional about, like, when devices are really valuable for being together.
Or you can even have students physically alone at home or something
Mhm.
and be connected, right?
Mhm.
People go hang
And
out
be
or
together.
something, and be together.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And how do we? Yeah, do you wanna project up? You got winners.
Ooh. That's an ominous sign.
Ooh.
Furious for that kind of stuff.
It's not good, Kevin.
It's not good, not
You
good.
guys might not want to look at this.
Not good. So we were looking actually, I think what was kind of interesting that we were doing was looking at some places that weren't the classroom. So like up at the top, you can see like in a public togetherness, you have like a playground, but also could be an element of aloneness as well, because sometimes you have kids who just kind of go off and do their own thing and whatever, but they have that freedom to do that. But we also have like you can see the kid on the left side, it's sitting in the hallway. Like many times I walk through schools and see a kid like sit in the hallway, either one or two, not sure always why. Have they been kicked out of the classroom, or is that like
Yes.
or do they choose to do that, or
Yes.
what, right? But on the right side, you can see there's like a lot of kids like in a hallway, maybe that's during a transitional period. But hallways could be learning spaces actually, and we just see there's a spectrum of like, there could be aloneness, but you could also have togetherness as well. Boo, do you want to talk about any of them?
No, I mean, that was most of them. We, at the beginning, found there's the picture in the middle that's, I think, kind of representative of an elementary classroom. I mean, something similar to what we see, the carpet space for all coming together. And then, some stations potentially set up. And not to overgeneralize, but it seems like the younger grades generally see much more flexible learning spaces than I do when I go into a secondary classroom. They seem much more uniform and committed to rows or groups, and not even really a lot other than that.
So I was contemplating that, and what I was wondering is how much of that is dictated by class size. Because I think about going over to Gateway when I first came on, and going in to coach a teacher that had 37 kids in a room. So every desk was taken, plus 2 kids that were literally like sitting in a chair sharing someone else's desk space. Like that, there's no way that teacher could have done anything other than what they were doing in that room. I mean, it's just no other way for there to be seating.
Well, the piece that I'm curious about in that example is that in a elementary classroom, even though there might be all of the seats taken, you'll find students sitting on the floor, right, or sitting on a beanbag, or
Yeah.
those types of things are not all at desks. Where I think traditionally in secondary we see students at desks.
Yeah, I also wonder about scale. So like if you're looking at the same square footage of an elementary classroom versus a high school classroom, but you look at the size of the humans,
I was about to say, the bodies are different.
right, yeah, right, so that plays into it as well, I think, like the practicality.
Yeah.
What-
I mean, 2 kids can share a beanbag chair in an elementary school, but
Right.
there's not too many 2 freshmen that want on one beanbag.
Nor would I recommend it.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, not appropriate
Yeah.
at that point.
Well, I think a lot of the sort of vision that we're looking at is how do we maybe break down some of those constraints where that becomes, all right, so 37 is untenable for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is space, right? Like classroom management is harder, like all of the things are harder at 37. And so how can we support schools in looking at different spaces, perhaps, where those children can be learning? And I think about the idea, can 5 of them take the device down to another space in the building and continue that learning, and not have to be constrained to that one room where they have to all be housed? But I think actual physical constraint is a part of this conversation. So if you look at, here I'll project back up for just a second, the resource of, we're gonna get the 666, they gave a new one. That was just for you.
That's for
That's
Kevin.
not Satan.
Just forget it.
Ouch.
It's pretty good. So on the site, I linked to where this came from. The active, they call it active learning spaces on the K-12 blueprint. But when you look at some of the classroom spaces that they have outlined, so these are things like layouts of specific classrooms. Some of these things are, what, this one, the kid who's like crazy bored over here?
Engagement.
Yeah, engagement, right? That's what that looks like, pretty much. And so when you're looking at the different layouts, you're like, all right, there is no way we could fit those amount of desks or tables or bodies inside of some of our classrooms that are much smaller. Sorry, I'm just waiting for it to load. But thinking about, all right, so what can we do? How can we look at these spaces differently? So they look at all of these different varieties of, all right, so that's your lecture hall right there, but looking at the different setups and how they actually can function in a secondary classroom. Because I do think, to a certain extent, a lot of elementary teachers feel empowered to change up their classroom in a lot of ways. And secondary staff maybe don't in the same. I don't know if you would
Well,
echo that sentiment.
I
But
think teachers are more afraid or not used to the fact that they can change things. So my teachers, I bought those nodes, so there's a picture of them up there. But I bought those nodes where they can move around and
those?
yeah, I bought those for my teachers to use. They hate them.
Oh, no.
I mean, they
Why?
hate them. And I'm like, why do you guys hate them? It's like, well, the kids can move around and they're spinning around and they're messing with the desk and they're going in that corner and we don't even see what they're doing. I'm like,
So the
you've got
issue
some
isn't the
control
desk.
here. They hate them. They hate them. But I'm like,
So interesting.
it's just, and so
It's-
I
it's
think
not
it's a
actually.
mindset.
On the
When we
students
were at
though.
Boulder,
They
when we
love
were in
this.
those chairs,
Mhm.
one of the first statements I said was, okay, now, I wasn't a bad kid in high school, but this would have been a problem for me.
Well, they literally, like, they roll around, they're like,
Right.
and the teachers are like, I'm going to kill someone because they're not, and then they like to hide, like, behind their screen and they get a wall behind them, and they just hate them, and I'm like, that was part of the whole design of them being able to pull groups in the middle of the lab, and so, I mean, we only have, I think, 4 in the lab right now, and the rest are in storage.
So I'm curious as to why we feel like every child needs a desk and a chair. So I've seen you work with just standing up.
yep.
So why do we not offer that as an option? When you talk space, a chair takes a lot of space. And some kids do work better standing, but we require them to sit. No, sit down, I'm sorry, we can't start until you're seated.
This right here was the first time I saw in
Yeah.
a classroom that they offered standing areas. And I was just like, so do you get to do this every day? And they were like, no, but I have to get here early in order to get the standing spot. And I was like, that's brilliant. Like,
Put
Even at your school in the tech lab, right?
Yes.
There's not a chair first, there's not a
Right.
desk, so it's interesting to
Yep.
see where students choose to sit. Some are on the floor, some are on those little ottomans, some
Yeah.
are at a table with a chair,
Yeah.
right? They have that choice.
At Laredo, we built standing desks for teachers. We managed to, our art teacher created them for like $30 a piece, which is amazing what a standing desk is.
Do they still have like a sitting desk with all their stuff on it?
This was a piece that went on top of their desk, so it converted it into a standing
Just
desk.
another piece to it.
Yes, and so and kids fought over it. Like we made, I think we did a GoFundMe and we did like 5 or 6 per classroom to fund them.
That makes me think about like, I remember sitting in, I think it was last year on the space convo, and they were talking about untethering teachers, and that like one mindset that might be a real challenge for teachers is to like give up space. So like you don't have a desk that doesn't move like in the corner of the classroom and all of your file cabinets. You rather have maybe like a lectern that you can move around that has some storage built into it, so that space is freed up for more movement inside of it as well. That could be like, that could be a challenge for many teachers to give up.
A teacher desk.
Give up space basically for the kids, you know.
But I think that is a constant issue where we have too many kids in a classroom. And so like, I mean, I have a buddy working at Central, he says, my 6th-hour class is 45 kids.
Oh.
And I said,
Yeah, that's great.
what? And he said, I have 45 kids in my classroom, and I have nowhere to put them.
Yeah.
Where was that at?
Central High School.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the interesting part is, do we allow those teachers to be flexible? You know, I've got
We better.
45 students,
Yeah.
45 students, right? Can I get them each a device, or can I say, look, you're free to go around the school and work where you want? And
Well, but then the stigma is, how do we know they're working? So it's like, it's kind of, and then you're evaluated on if the kids are working or not. And he said, you know, and this is like off the record, but he was working and he had half the kids.
It's not work right.
You know, he had half the kids working on something, and then half the other kids were, they had earned an incentive to watch a movie. Well, then his evaluator walks in and is like, uh-oh, you're having kids watch a movie? Like, where is, I mean, it's like, wait a second though, but I
Incentives are not
use
allowed
that.
to
so there's gotta be
You
a,
know,
there's
yeah.
gotta be an understanding of the full picture, right? Not
Yeah.
just when I walk in, you've got kids watching a movie, what's the full picture of
Well,
that, right?
and he's like, it was the last 10 minutes of the class. And so he was like, really? It's like, and that's what I'm gonna get nailed for, is that the kids are watching a movie. But there's background behind that. So, but he has 45 kids and he cannot physically manage all 45 of them doing one task.
Yeah, and I don't think that that's a good idea in general anyway. But I would say, how is it that we can have those conversations, both about mindset as well as about constraint? And so when we're looking at, this is the constraint I have, that is an opportunity for
Yeah.
design. That is an opportunity for, and what I would hope is actually earned autonomy for some of those kids, right? Where they can go to another space and they actually don't need the same level of oversight as some of the other kids.
That's
So,
got to come with earned autonomy for the teachers.
well, exactly right. And so
That's-
how do they?
Evaluation has got to be built into that conversation, because right now Randa is a restraint.
Hmm.
It is.
So, restraint, constraint.
We're okay. We're okay.
Not restraint.
Yeah.
Not actually holding it on.
Can I,
Yeah, please project, because I want to make sure that we hit everybody here.
which one is this?
It's the collaboratory. Let me get off of it, and then you can have it.
So we were just out in San Diego week before last, and went to. Do I get a new AirPay code?
Oh, same one.
Oh, you got the sync see?
Yeah.
What have I done?
So this is at High Tech High. You can see you've got kids over here sitting on the floor. You've got regular desks, and then you've got these high tops with computers.
Whoa, you got kids up on top of that?
Yeah.
They must have
There's a
built it, right?
stairway there. I'm sure they did. Yep. Nope.
No liability.
Then this one is at Design 39 Elementary School. Those kids are just in the hall.
That's in the hallway.
It's in the hallway. This is at High Tech Elementary. This is just a private space.
That's exactly right.
Behavior stuff, right? For, this is the zones of, and then this is at Urban Discovery Academy, where they invested in these tables, these desks that can be moved into a variety of configurations, so that, and right, the way they had it set up right now, they were getting ready for an exhibition. This was 8th grade, and they had these around the outside because they had all their tables, all their chairs set up in a circle in the middle. So they easily could move their furniture around, and did frequently.
Hey, no, that, go back to the one in the elementary. Down.
This one?
That,
This
that one. So I've noticed, like studying this stuff for a little bit and researching, like there's a common theme I'm noticing about like removing clutter from the walls.
Mhm.
And so like, I wonder what's the threshold, right? Because in elementaries, there's stuff like all over the place, it seems like. And then, you know, often at high schools, maybe not as much, but like, is that stuff useful? Does it serve a purpose? And like, where do you I don't know, where do you draw the line? Like,
So our tour guide at Design 39, young lady named Gabby, she's the cutest little thing, told us that there is research that says, let me find the right picture, that you should not have too much on your walls.
yeah, right.
That's not.
Well, and what's interesting as you're showing these photos, Dawn, thought comes to my mind is, especially with the high-tech one, are students designing these spaces? And what say do we allow from students, or what voice
Exactly.
in terms of the spaces in which they're learning? It's traditionally the teacher, the school staff, et cetera, that's coming up with those spaces, whereas it would be really interesting if students were allowed to sort of tweak the space in which they learned it.
Yeah.
It's a good point. It's basically design versus user experience.
Right.
So what is the user experience versus the design that you thought the user experience would be? And sometimes they completely conflict with each other.
Totally, like in the design process, right? Like a traditional theory, like habit of mind might be like you're assuming what they need and how it needs to be set up versus actually empathizing with the users, and coming from that creative habit of mind where you might like co-construct how things are set up instead of making that assumption.
Yeah, so that's Gabby. She is 7th grade, and she understands and knows and was able to tell us as our tour guide that their walls are white on purpose and they don't overclutter them because this is what she's telling us. There's research that says that kids get distracted because there are too many things on the wall. And an 8th grader is able to tell a group of adults that. If kids know it, then why don't adults know it?
Because we tell adults that students need anchor charts and, examples of, exemplars and.
Yeah.
But then the fire marshal comes through and says, that's
Yeah. And he did, he said, you gotta like
20%.
cut down,
Yeah,
right?
can't put it on the windows.
But it's not to say that we can't have like anchor charts and student work and stuff. I just, I'm wondering
I'm really
like,
interested in that idea about who's creating them though.
Yes.
Right, and the ownership of the learning on the walls, right?
Right.
So there's a lot of thinking around, right, like, so sharing, students sharing their work
But
versus
it's-
teachers sharing the work for them.
Yeah, and it's students sharing their work, not students sharing their work on the wall of
Right.
your classroom.
And it's a very generalized anchor chart, right? This anchor chart is for everybody. Well,
Yeah.
maybe an anchor chart
Done
looks
with
different to
your
you
mom.
than it does to me.
Yeah, and so, I love that idea about, okay, young people, there are two things we'd like to have happen. We'd like to have a space, not necessarily on the wall of this room, but perhaps, where we can have some places for you to refer to key ideas, your anchor, the anchor pieces of your learning. How would you like to design that space? Either using these walls or using your device?
What if on the
Similarly
wall
with
is just a bit.ly link or
Yeah.
something like that, and you go to that
QR
link
code.
and you could, QR code,
There's
you
a,
can
there's a,
see the
yeah, there's a
different.
Google Doc that we
Take a
share.
picture
There's
of
a
your-
Prezi that we share.
Jessica Rodriguez had Pinterest boards.
Yeah,
And the kids joined
There you
different
go.
Pinterest boards.
And added things to
And
them.
added things to it.
Yeah, anything else that you would share about the spaces that you identified, Jan?
Oh, yeah, just about everybody hit. I struggled with thinking there's an awful lot of things that could go in all 4 spaces, I think the one thing I wrote down that no one else wrote down was in maybe it's private, I don't know. Depends on how you define classroom, right? Public and alone would be headphones in a classroom.
Mhm.
So kiddos are all, that doesn't mean it's a bad thing, but they're all in a different place, and so they have their headphones on, they're doing their learning one-on-one.
Yep.
With their device and whatever the teacher is.
Yep. And so I think identifying what the space is, and what I've heard very consistently is that the intentionality of the space matters. Like, for that particular learning experience, what space do we need in order to be able to do that? Right? Do kids need to be able to sit on the floor? Do they need a desk that doesn't swivel around and distract everyone? Like, what is the learning that needs to happen here, and let's choose the space. I just wanted to put up, Desmond shared the pictures from earlier in Boulder. This is their PD room. I've been in it a couple of different times, but if there's anything that you would call out, these are the different screens.
The reason I put that there is because we, in our conference area, we have a conference room area in our office that we're looking to kind of kind of hide where we put all the cables and all the equipment. So I told them to take a picture of that because I like that because it's concealed.
Yeah,
It's
it's
out of the way.
really inconspicuous. And then, just lots of different spaces. It's a pretty small room.
Mhm.
Like, it is not super big, but they have done lots of different things, video conferencing, things like that. But just looking at all of the different spaces, and I really like the built-in stuff too
Yeah.
for charging rather than like this enormous cart that takes up a
Oh,
huge
it's so
space.
messy,
Yeah.
it's so messy.
And I
So-
wonder, like, moving towards like lockers with power outlets in them and stuff, and like, yeah.
Yeah, those are super fun.
I wonder about the practicality of, so when I was doing this design challenge last week with some people, she was like, well, one of the people was saying, let's put our design challenge was there's 4 pillars in the middle of the room, so like, how do we make that into an opportunity? So it's like, let's put a flat screen TV on all 4, right? And I was like, well, I mean, in all practicality, and cost-wise, like, can we really afford to do that? And I'm hearing, like, having a big video teleconference set up and having multiple monitors in every classroom, like, I just wonder, I guess I would push back on that, like, is that practical, and what's the purpose, and is it possible to still be able to fulfill the purpose with less, and I don't know, these are just some like thoughts. That
Well, and we talked about, so especially if you are trying to move between these spaces, having things attached to the wall makes it harder, right? So having the ability to move from a, super private, intimate learning environment to something that could be more public, you have to be able to move whether it's the screen or the front of the classroom. And so to me, that's where I'd like this conversation to go. And although we don't have enough time to really dig in, I did want to share this resource, and it's a little bit of guiding principle. If you click on the link from what it says, what is missing, it takes you to the Third Teacher, which is a great book if you're interested in reading the whole book. But these are the 79 considerations of space that the Third Teacher talks about, and it's sort of a flashcard. Thinking about when you are designing a space, everyone can be a designer. So looking at teachers and students and architects and designers, it talks about the safety of the space, right? So do no harm, cherish children's spaces. So looking at these different components and saying, all right, so what are the cards that I need to consider in order to create all of these different kinds of spaces? What are the considerations I have for this particular learning task? And so as we continue to dive into sort of the broader vision, what I want to do is capture. I want to start capturing, and we have done a little bit today, where you brought in spaces from outside of the district, so did you, Dawn. Like, if you can share those, and so you can just share the folder with me if you'd like to do that, right? But if we can start capturing what we are currently experiencing or what we would like to start seeing, then we can start building those models and start saying to one another, all right, so I saw lots and lots of public and togetherness going on in this classroom. That's pretty much all there was. But for quiet reflection, for an introvert, there's not a lot going on in this secondary classroom. So how is it that we can create those opportunities? And as we continue to build what it means to be a From1to1 school or grade level or classroom, then we can continue to think about, all right, so what are those models that we would adhere to?
And I would challenge us as well, like, to not only look at like the classroom spaces, but look at those public spaces as well. Like, where are there some pretty neat, models of like school lobbies, hallways, like auditorium? Is it only for that focus? Like, there's so many opportunities with the spaces that are inside of schools, even spaces we might not even imagine would be for learning. Somebody might have rejigged and hacked for learning, like try to look for that type of stuff as well.
I was at a school 4 years ago maybe in San Antonio, the Anne Frank Inspire Academy. They had treehouse masters.
That's
Build a treehouse that was part of the school.
That's awesome.
That's really great. So please share if you want to take your physical paper with you, just let me take a picture. Otherwise, I would love to have the physical copy. If you made it digital something or other, would you share that digital something or other with me? And we will all put it on the site and continue with our next session. Thank
Thanks,
you all
Ben.
for coming.
Thanks, Ben.